Break out the carrot sticks and natural yogurt, no artificial hormones added. It's time for the Doctor's Nutrition Show. Dr. Lewis and Janet have a long history of helping people achieve their maximum potential. While Janet is a certified natural health consultant with a unique perspective of alternative and complementary nutrition, Dr. Lewis stays current on the latest research pertaining to nutritional supplements and optimum health. Paramount to their educational journey was their trip to China while studying Chinese medical doctors. Dr. Lewis and Janet know the importance of proper nutrition in the healing process and maintenance of the human body. Get ready to gain a healthy perspective on life. This is the Doctor's Nutrition Show.
Welcome to this week's edition of the Doctor's Nutrition Show, where we have natural solutions for common health issues. We are Doctor's Nutrition of Texas. I am Janet Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Lewis.
And we are in the business of helping you get well, doing low-cost lab work and taking the guesswork out of what you need for your nutritional supplements. Our consultations are always free with the doctor, and our low-cost lab is always low, so available across the United States. Our website is doctorsnutrition.org. It's drsnutrition.org. We'd like you to check it out and look around there. There's a health survey that you can fill out and find out what's going on with your health. But today we've got a very exciting show for you about stress eating, and does stress eating lead to fatty liver disease? And, a little bit about what is fatty liver. We have some questions about that. We've also got one of our clients that's asking about probiotics, whether they should be kept cold or not, and many other exciting things that Dr. Lewis wants to share with you. So let's get right into it, and let's start with the probiotic question of that we had from Debbie that wanted to know about, is it better to buy a probiotic that's refrigerated, or does it really matter if you get it right off the shelf, or what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, this is kind of a funny question because it comes from a lady I grew up with. Her family in Hugh Springs, Texas was kind of they were like a cornerstone family. They just upright, upstanding, good people, and now Debbie's listening to me, so thank you very much. She said she got a chuckle out of my comment on one of the podcasts about Midland being stinky. Well, I was actually thinking of Amarillo and all the confined animal feeding operations, but then I also talk about Emily and Amarillo, and she's actually in Lubbock too, so I get West Texas mixed up. My mind's convoluted. So the question is it better to be refrigerated on your probiotics? And the short answer is, in some of them it seems to make a difference. In others, it doesn't matter at all. And what probiotic companies do, they make sure they get a higher count of CFUs, or colony forming units, so that even if it gets in the heat and some of those die off, that you're still getting more than the stated potency on the bottle. But my question is, if they're so fragile that they have to be refrigerated, what happens when you throw them into a tummy that's 100 degrees or so? We should be getting our probiotics out of the soil. The ones that eat organic and get it out of their garden are getting probiotics that live in the soil. I don't think it's that critical personally, but yeah, we have them in a refrigerator. We ship them with ice packs, except the ones that don't require refrigeration. But that's more a matter of what your bowel habits as to which one you need. So that's an individualized thing. So, Debbie, thanks for listening. This is a lady I grew up with, so that's very, very flattering. Always a sweet lady.
Yeah, our probiotics that we have here, we have them in the fridge. And, what we always tell people is that with them out on the shelf just sitting there, they last about 2 years, and if they were refrigerated, they last about 4. But with our Texas heat, when we ship them, we always try to put them in a bag with an ice pack, because it gets a little warm here in Texas. Some of you up north are maybe not experiencing that yet.
Oh, and that brings up a good point, because I asked a PhD in microbiology many years ago. I just love this lady. I took several courses from her. She was really tough. Asked her how critical it was, and she took me over to a glass bottle that was on the shelf. She says, well, you see this? We've been using the same probiotics to grow for 30 years and it still comes to life. So she said the most important thing was keep it in a glass bottle where it couldn't get sunlight, a dark glass bottle, and keep the moisture out of it. And she said they're still coming to life 30 years later. So, folks, it's not that critical.
Okay. Well, very good. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about stress management and stress eating and all that kind of good stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about, the reasons why people like to eat or eat out of stress, I guess, is a better way to say it, and how can we avoid that, and what can we do differently, and where does all this go?
Yeah, some of the stress busters are learning to eat to live rather than eat out of stress. And most people, whether they realize it or not, they're stress eaters because our society has been trained to eat out of pleasure rather than eat just because it, helps sustain life. I think you've got to realize why you do that, even though it may be a subconscious thing, and be aware of what you're being advertised to do and some of the bigger companies are trying to manipulate you to eat. And they will have pictures of bikini-clad women and snacks that are not healthy for you. So people think that Janet and I eat very, very strangely because we don't eat for pleasure. We eat very, very little, and we eat better quality but lower quantities of things. And, it's not like I'm skinny. I'm 178 pounds and 5'10", but stress management, don't eat that way to bust your stress. You can take short naps. Actually makes you much more productive. If you do that, you've got to understand that a lot of these commercials are excitatory. They're trying to get you excited. And, Janet says, we have an exciting podcast coming for you today. Well, yes, but we're hoping excitement transfers into enjoyment. And when it comes to stress and eating, those two don't necessarily go together. One other thing you can do is you can make a budget. You can start saving a little bit. I've said this since 1986, owning a BMW, or the thrill of owning a BMW, goes away a long time before the payments do. So start saving. It feels better to have a few bucks in your pocket rather than be right on the edge. You got to eat and drink very, very wisely. The best thing you can do besides that, I think, is a spiritual pursuit, and laugh. Find something to laugh about. I think that's super, super important. Getting enough sleep, the nap I talked about, and figure out what's stressing you. And I don't understand stress quite as much as some people because I don't do fear like other people. And I've got a thing up on one of my office walls that says, God didn't give you a spirit of fear, but one of a sound mind and love, and whatever that says. But if God didn't give you a spirit of fear, when I have fear, I confront it, go ahead and get through it, and move on down the road and find something to laugh about, really.
Well, with the winter, us coming out of the winter, it seems we do more stress eating because I guess we can't get out and exercise or walk and enjoy nature. And it just feels like you just pick worse foods that are not good for you, but it's just dark outside, and it doesn't make for a place where you want to, pick something healthy. But spring's coming up now. Things are beginning to bloom here in Texas, and maybe not up north yet. But our stuff always blooms, and then we have a freeze and kills it again. What I always look forward to is taking a walk. And it doesn't have to be a long walk, 25 minutes or something, but it's a way to relieve stress.
I think taking a walk through the woods with a .22 trying to squirrel hunt, but then the pigs moved in, so now I'm a pig hunter instead of a squirrel hunter. But
it's a way to do something different and get your body moving and not eat all the time just to, try to avoid being depressed, basically.
A lot of these foods, they put things in it that, under the guise of artificial and natural flavorings that are neuroexcitatory, like the sugar, salt, the fructose, which I think we're going to get into the fructose. But the MSG, we've known since 1974, MSG is devastating to your brain because it excites your brain, and it's actually as addictive as cocaine and heroin.
Well, what about taking something for stress? Like, a lot of people are on Paxil, Prozac, Wellbutrin, different ones like that. Creates
its own stress. And if you're Wanting to do harm to yourself, yes, go right straight to your MD and whatever they tell you to do with the Paxil, Prozac, Wellbutrin. But we have dozens and hundreds of people that says, I want to get off of it. And I said, I'm a chiropractor. I'm not going to tell you to get off a drug. That's between you and your MD. And it's a bumpy road, but you can make it. So you got to clean up the guts with proper probiotics, proper food, exercise, which helps increase bowel movements, gets rid of the toxins. And there are a lot of things that you can take, like 5-HTP and GABA. Theanine is a popular one. Tyrosine works really, really well, and even fish oil, if it's a good one. Most of them are not, folks. It decreases the so-called fire in the brain or the inflammation. So there's so many things that you can do that are small steps but will decrease your amount of stress. But me, I just don't entertain him.
And so when you talk about cleaning up the diet and all and stress, you may not know, or if you've listened to our show very long, you may know, but the stress and depression come out of your gut. It's not in your head.
It's not your spouse.
Right. And so when you're talking about taking a drug for it or whatever,
it can be.
Maybe you should consider cleaning up the gut, which leads us into the fatty liver part. When you're that stressed and depressed, then you have more of an issue with having things like fatty liver because it's a digestive problem. And one way you can tell that is if you process everything you eat, the liver has got to do its repair there. And if you're putting in more junk than you are good things, then the liver's getting burdened. And people that it happens commonly in are people between the ages of 40 and 60.
Although it's getting very, very prevalent in the toddlers, and it's even more so prevalent in the teenagers.
We see it a lot now on our lab work when we run it because, that's one of the things that we're looking at is your liver enzymes. And when you see that somebody's eating a lot of the bad fats, we talk about eating good fats, but if they're eating the bad fats and they're leading toward being a type 2 diabetic, or they are one, you'll see the liver enzymes are elevated, which means they have early stage fatty liver.
And your triglycerides are going up. So in the range on those ALTs and ASTs, you don't want it in range because when they get around 25 and higher on a woman, you're beginning to have the tendency to go into non-alcoholic liver disease or non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And it's 30 and above on a man, so you don't want to do that. The number one problem with that, and not the only problem, but number one problem is high fructose corn syrup or fructose from other sources.
And some of the symptoms you may experience from a fatty liver is that you'll have poor appetite, weight loss, like extreme weight loss, abdominal pain, weakness, and confusion, because that actually messes with your mind.
But that's when it gets bad, too.
Right. And they don't really know the cause of the fatty liver other than the ones that are done from alcoholism and heavy drinking. They do know that causes alcoholic fatty liver.
Well, see, she's talking about that. I'm talking about a different one. But, whether it's alcoholic or non-alcoholic, the high fructose corn syrup. But because fructose and liver are processed the same way. It's not burnt like glucose. It's just absorbed into fat. Alcohol and fructose does that.
Right. But anyway, there are things that you can do to clean that kind of stuff up. So if you're eating that way or you just can't really stop the cycle, there are products that you can take that do help to help you have an advantage over what you pick to eat and help clean the liver back up. We call it our Clean It Up package because it includes the greens, which are a powdered formula that you mix in water that's all of your vegetables and some of your fruits. There's something in it called Super Oxy Pro that is a big liver detoxifier. There's a multivitamin because, believe it or not, you need a multivitamin because of all the minerals. Many times you're grabbing stress-related foods and you're really just missing some minerals that if you had the right nutrition in, you really wouldn't even want those bad foods. And then the other one is a probiotic where you need to put that back into the gut, so you put the good fertilizer back in in the gut so that you quit craving all these bad things and we can start really making advances with your health. So if you want to really get healthy, start with the Clean It Up package, and that's something you don't have to have lab work for. You can just purchase that on our website at doctorsnutrition.org and get started. But do you want to talk a little bit more about the different kinds of stress eating and more about the liver and what all's going on with that?
Yeah, I've got a lot that I could say about that. Janet was talking about getting the minerals, and the minerals are always key. We don't have enough minerals in our diet because it's not in our food, so it's by far best to supplement, but it has to be the proper form. But the other part is vitamins are missing also, and then when you cook these foods, most of the vitamins go away. But they're usually not there in great quantities to start with, and then if they lose most of the vitamins in shipment and the time that it takes to ship. So it's very, very common to have B vitamin deficiencies, and B vitamins are just the basics. And then we have half of the people that have this MTHF problem, methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase problem, and y'all can Google that. There's a couple of good sites there that'll tell you if you have that genetic SNP, which is SNP, called single nucleotide polymorphism. I'm going to get tongue-tied here, but I went on a heavy dose of this specifically made folic acid before I had the genetic test to see that I actually did have one of these SNPs that allowed me to not utilize folic acid, B12. But there's at least 11 pathways of detoxification in the liver. One of them's methylation. Methylation is the one that's methyl donors, and that has to do with B vitamins. So what's the significance there? Well, there's several different entities that study cancer in a very, very broad range. They'll do meta-studies where they look at hundreds and even thousands of research that's been done all over the world about cancer, and they say that in all cases, or in almost all cases of cancer, you have hypomethylation, which means less of that working. So you need your B vitamins. 50% of us need that specialized folic acid, and that's why it's very important to eat these greens and eat the vegetables, get them organic. It does make a huge difference. Because for years they said, oh, well, organic's not any more nutritious than the regular. Well, even if that was true, it would be worth the premium you pay for the lack of pesticides. But 2 or 3 days ago on Good Morning America, it scrolled across and says, well, organic has higher degrees of nutrients than non-organic. It's like, well, duh, we've known that for years. So on the hypomethylation, that's very, very important, and that's why we have the greens in that package. They're called detox greens. Don't be like this friend of ours. He's in his 50s. He's had one kidney removed from cancer. He's so large that he can't hardly do his job, and he huffs and puffs and has a hard time breathing. And it's a great guy. I love hanging around. He says, I've got to lose weight. I've got to lose weight. He said, I've lost my sex drive totally, and he has a wonderful wife that's missing him. And I said, well, you've got to start eating vegetables. He said, I'm not going to eat a vegetable. I said, you've already lost one kidney to cancer and you're not changing anything in your life. Why do you think cancer's not going to grow back in the same condition that it grew in the first place? He said, well, I'm not going to eat a vegetable. I said, well, don't ask me for advice, because that's my advice. You've got to put different, better things into the temple of the Holy Spirit, and you have to put less food in there. Janet and I eat a whole lot less, and in all studies that I've ever read, one especially stuck in my mind. There was this study done on rats. They gave, some of them could eat as much as they want. Some of them could eat a reduced amount with reduced protein. The ones that had half as much as what they wanted lived much, much, much longer, and they had more energy because they were, I think, running around trying to find something to eat. So the moral of the story is, if you want to be a long-lived, skinny rat, reduce the amount of food that you're putting in your body and make sure it's higher quality food.
Well, isn't it true that if you drink a couple of cans of a fizzy drink like fruit juice or Cokes or Dr. Peppers, that it can result in long-term liver damage?
That's more than just true. That's like people say that, and I say, well, duh, isn't that common knowledge? And I talked to a guy yesterday, very nice young man. He says, yes, sir, no, sir, very respectful. He's actually a referral from my brother, Dr. James Lewis, and this guy is just absolutely great. He says, I'm feeling better, and this is better, and this is better, and this is better. He says, but for some reason, your pills go down better with that fuzzy carbonated drink. So instead of drinking one Coke, and I'm not saying Coke, the brand name, that's what us Southerners call a soft drink. We call them all Cokes.
Soda waters.
Yeah, that's what my grandmother said. Born in 1899, so that kind of dates her. He says, I have to drink an extra Coke a day, 2 instead of 1, just to get your pills down, and I'm feeling better. He says, what do you think about it? I said, well, I understand it's trouble getting some of this stuff down, but it's worth the effort, and I think eventually you should change that, because what happens, when you do that, it kind of has a tendency to create gout, because when you're doing that fructose that we talk about that metabolizes like alcohol, what happens, it converts the carbohydrates into fat. Think people that have high triglycerides, and that promotes insulin resistance. Most of you that deal with me for your health, most of you have to say, well, you're into insulin resistance, because even if your A1C is good, you still have too much insulin left over, because that's one of the tests we just added. Then there's something called dyslipidemia, which means your cholesterol goes abnormal. And I always tell people, cholesterol's not really that big a deal. You just have to look at the entire picture, and that's mostly triglycerides. See, I'm sorry, losing my voice, which, people around here are happy when I lose my voice. We get a whole lot more done.
We let him keep on talking.
Yeah. And then, it does cellular damage, and you've got to avoid that. And then it can lead to, when your cells get damaged from all that, it can lead to increased uric acid levels, think gout, and a lot of pain. And, that's a waste product that's found in your blood, and you have to take higher levels of antioxidants. And then when the uric acid levels get really, really high, it begins to do harmful levels or harmful things in your cells, and that's when you're starting to feel the intense pain that goes with that. And then you develop, with the insulin resistance and the gout or high levels of uric acid, then you begin to develop high blood pressure. So it's one thing to take a high blood pressure pill, and that's good if it's dangerous, but at least do something that decreases the reason you have high blood pressure in the first place, and then that leads toward diabetes and obesity and kidney disease. So, we can also check uric acid levels, which we do from time to time, depending on what the person wants. But even one sugary drink a day greatly increases your risk of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and sugary drink includes juices. These people say, but I love my juice. And I'm like, well, okay, if you love it, I'm not going to talk them out of it. But, fruit juice, God put that juice in with the fiber. If you're going to drink apple juice, eat the fiber that goes along with it. And that's a major source of fructose. And it spikes the blood sugar level because it doesn't have the fiber in there to keep it level. There's a reason why fruits were developed the way they are. And keep in mind that fruits are a lot sweeter than they were 100 years ago because of the way they've been hybridized, if not genetically modified.
One of the questions we always ask people when they start telling us about liver symptoms is, do you wake up in the middle of the night sweating? And we always tell people if they wake up between the hours of 1 and 3 in the morning, that's when the liver is regenerating. And many times people will tell us, hey, I just can't sleep all night. For some reason, I wake up about 1 and I can't go back to sleep till about 3. Well, that's because the liver is trying to regenerate. So if you're doing that, the body's giving you a sign that, hey, there's something going on here. There's something I don't like. It can be, taking acetaminophen over-the-counter type things can make your liver be upset. And we always recommend if you don't really know what's going on, again, if you don't want to do our low-cost lab work, there's a couple of products that you can get. One we really like called DN Detox. It stands for Doctor's Nutrition Detox, but it'll help pull off those toxins. And then another, which we've given tons of people when they tell us their weight between 1 and 3, we give them a product called Liver Support and Detox. And amazingly enough, where they thought they needed to ditch their bed because they couldn't sleep all night, they took the liver detox and stayed asleep all night long. But there are also other times when it's not your liver and it's actually an estrogen problem.
That's really good, Janet, the way you're tying that together, because there's a study out of Journal of Family Practice that talked about night sweats being fluctuating estrogen levels. And you've heard us talk a bajillion times about the xenoestrogens, environmental exogenous estrogens. That's the BPA, that's the phthalates, that's the fire retardants in your bed that act like estrogen also. People that are on birth control, that's really, really common. So if you have fluctuating estrogen levels, how do I tie this together? Well, because the liver is very responsible in taking these more harmful types or forms of estrogen and convoluting or conjugating these estrogens into a safer place. And even though I'm not a chemist, I understand the basic chemistry of this. And as your liver takes these estrogen cell or molecules and conjugates them and makes them safe, it has to go through the bile. And if it's clogged up with dyslipidemia or high cholesterol and biliary tract obstruction, that's when your liver enzymes are beginning to go a little bit high and you have the high liver enzymes. Guess what? It can't go through the bile, but when it finally barely sort of gets squished through into the small intestine and into the large intestine, if you do not have the proper probiotics, it's very important, and you don't poop 3 times a day like Janet's train story, then these conjugated estrogens turn back because of the bad bacteria in your guts and yeast, and it reabsorbs back into the body through the colon wall, and these estrogens go back to the bad form, and these are the ones that are very, very prevalent in causing breast cancer, ovarian, uterine, prostate, and testicular cancer. And we've seen more than our share of 20-year-olds with testicular cancer. It's getting more and more prevalent. How many people know babies that have cancer and kids, and it's really, really sad. And we know it's coming from the plastics, the phthalates. And one of the pieces of advice to avoid the phthalates is don't drink out of a water hose. Well, everybody my age did that, but I think they're actually a lot more harmful than they used to be because chemistry's changed and the phthalate count has gone up. So if you're sweating, you really need to do the lab work, whether it's from your doctor and send it to us or just through ours, which is pretty low cost.
Well, what about just growing a beard? Won't a beard help keep some things away too?
Yeah, growing a beard. There was a study done. We thought it was kind of weird, so we'd throw it in here. But it actually says, it was a study saying that nurses with beards, the guys, not necessarily the Larry the Cable Guy's sister.
Now, if a woman has it, they might want to come see us also.
It actually harbored bacteria that was not transferred in a harmful way to the patients, but was actually very disease protective. I can't grow much of a beard, but I got a big ugly mustache that some people say looks like a ferret sitting on my upper lip. It actually wards away more of the harmful bacteria. So don't be afraid of facial hair.
Like MRSA. It really helped keep that at bay. And maybe that's because it's cultivating itself in there. I'm not sure what it's doing, and you get an immunity to it.
Well, that's why Janet's so good looking, because I've got an ugly mustache, and she kisses me once or twice a year. So,
well, aren't there some books they could read, like Fat Chance or?
Fat Chance is one of the best books. That's a good one. I don't know where Janet comes up with this because I don't even give her a hint, but that's written by Robert Lustig. that book was given to me by Dr. Jim Fox in Biloxi, but it's really, really good. It talks about how carbohydrates and sugars are bad and what fats to eat, what not to eat, and why there's growing obesity, not just in the United States, but in the world itself, and how it's linked to carbs and high fructose corn syrup. And he's a brilliant man. It's something that most people could read and actually enjoy. So, yeah, Fat Chance, very good.
So that'll kind of give them an idea where they can go to help get themselves back healthy and pick better foods and quit eating out of stress and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I ate an apple for supper last night, folks. So, it's not, you just don't eat
for enjoyment anymore. We used to do that, but then we weren't healthy.
Yeah, that's true.
But hopefully you've learned something on today's show. And please, like I said, go to our website, doctorsnutrition.org. It's drsnutrition.org. There you will find many other podcasts and topics and shows. And if you've enjoyed the show, please refer it to someone else. Send it to them, however you send it. I know you guys are brilliant out there with the audio stuff, but friends or family that may need this, it may save their life someday. Get on our website and fill out our health survey and get started so that we can help you determine how to get your health back.
That's the best way to be blessed, is bless others. Be like John in Hickory, North Carolina, that sent me dozens of people, and I get referrals from all over the place. So thank you for that, and I know that you're going to be blessed just because you're blessing others, and you're going to achieve greater levels of health and greater levels of enjoyment in your life.
You guys have a great week, and we'll see you right here next time, right on the Doctor's Nutrition Show.